Hey guys, Mosa here, and today I'm bringing you my Week 7 NFL Power Rankings. Now, without a further ado, let's get started. Now, let's kick it off with the Carolina Panthers, who just came off a loss to the Falcons and will take on the Commanders in Washington. Now, when it comes to the Panthers, honestly, they're just horrific this season, and they will most likely be getting the first overall pick. No doubt in my mind, they are the worst team in the National Football League. That doesn't mean that the players themselves are to blame. To be honest, I don't blame quarterback Bryce Young for how he performed. Realistically, he also got held a bad team. Honestly, being the team that gets a player on a team like this, losing your top receiver DJ Moore to get you, and a bunch of other things happening. Yeah, there was no way he was going to be successful with the Panthers. Most likely next year, depending on the situation, they might get better. But for now, they are the worst team in the NFL. Now, moving on to the New England Patriots, we got the Patriots losing to the Texans this last weekend, and now we'll take on the Jaguars in London. Now, the 1-5 Patriots, obviously, they lost to the Texans. Honestly, Drake May did a decent job for honestly a bad Patriots team. And yeah, there's nothing more I can really say. Like, it was the Texans that were expected to lose. This is really going to be a game that is it is a must win, but in the sense of, hey, you're not going to be a playoff contender. So at this point, they're probably thinking of tanking. Honestly, that's not a good thing to do. You want to win every game, but in certain circumstances, you might want to. In this case, I think both teams are actually in that case, but right now, the Patriots, they need a lot to help this team. Now, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-4, just took an L from the Steelers and will take on the Rams, who are coming off a bye. Now, when it comes to the LA Rams and the Las Vegas Raiders, that's going to be an interesting game to watch. But honestly, the Steelers just coming up with absolutely nothing while the Raiders shot themselves in the foot. Because that's honestly what happened. It wasn't the Steelers beating the Raiders, it was the Raiders beating the Raiders. And the Raiders have been like this for a while, and they will continue to be like this and throughout the entire of the 2024 NFL season. So yeah, I expect them to be nothing but top 5, top 10 draft pick this season. Now, moving on to the Tennessee Titans, we got them going up against the Bills this coming Sunday, and they just took an L from the Indianapolis Colts. Now, to be honest, the Titans, they're just, oh my goodness, the Titans are just a horrific franchise that should honestly have just, like, in the end, it doesn't matter if it was Callahan or if it was the former head coach Brable, doesn't matter. This team was going to suck either ways. And yeah, this team is just, it's just not the team that you'd expect, like, from years past. But yeah, this Titans team is just horrific. Will Levis not doing too good. The run game's not doing too good. The defense is giving up points. I think that this team is not going to make it into the playoffs, and it's not going to even get close to even rivaling a chance to get into the playoffs. Now, moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they just took an L from the Chicago Bears in London. Now they're going back to London to face off against the New England Patriots. And this Jaguars team is just not good. Like, Trevor Lawrence is a pretty good quarterback, but he's just in a very terrible situation. And after Doug Peterson saying that stuff like, hey, we need a culture change. Well, yeah, you know what that means? That means you getting your butt out of Jacksonville. That's what that means, because you don't get rid of a culture change with the same head coach on the team. So if that's the case, then, well, start packing your bags, Doug. Well, but do it after the season, because I think the Jaguars won't fire you yet, but they will indeed fire you at the end of the year. But yeah, this team is just not going to be good. Also a top 5, top 10 draft pick getting for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And realistically, they're just god awful. And it's nothing to do with Trevor Lawrence. Now, moving on to New York Giants, we got them taking an L on Sunday Night Football to the Bengals, and now they're going to take on the Eagles on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Giants, honestly, they had this game. They really should have had this game, but yeah, in the end, the Bengals just came up with it. And honestly, I think that Seattle win they got was a fluke now because of this. Because realistically, you should have beaten the Bengals. You should have beaten the Bengals, not the other way around. And this just proves that the Giants are just not bound for the playoffs this year. Definitely, 100%. And yeah, they're going to need a miracle, in my opinion. I know it's only week 6, so honestly, there's still a lot of games left, but we're already a quarter of the way through the NFL year. So yeah, we're really on the tough end of the NFL season when it comes to how you're going to perform in getting into the playoffs. Now, moving on to the New Orleans Saints, who just took an L from the Buccaneers and will take on the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. The Saints, honestly, started the year going 2-0, taking down the Cowboys and taking down the Panthers. The Panthers obviously was a given, and the Cowboys was a surprise, but now going on an 0-4 streak, 4 consecutive losses. This team was definitely 100% a fluke. It was just a fluke because honestly, they should have beaten some of these teams at least by close margins. Like, look at this team. They should have actually been in contention with the Buccaneers, but now I don't see them even getting close to the division title, let alone the playoffs. Now, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers, who just came off a bye and will take on the Raiders on Sunday. And realistically, the Rams, they just got a heavy bye week, to be honest, because realistically, this team needed this bye. They needed the break, they needed some rest, and honestly, they're going to come back and they're going to school the Raiders on Sunday. Honestly, Matt Stafford, get ready for some deep bombs because that's what you're going to be doing all day against the Raiders. And the Raiders will most likely, just like they did with Pittsburgh, shoot themselves in the foot. Now on to the Washington Commanders, who took an L from Baltimore, their second loss of the year, and they're going to take on the Panthers. Yeah, you heard that right, the Panthers. This team, who is currently leading the NFC East, by the way, is leading the NFC East over the Cowboys and over the Eagles. Giants, don't even say anything about them. But still, Panthers are a given. That is an easy game, but it can also be a trap game. So Washington, you got to watch out. In the end, I think Jaden Daniels has been doing pretty well this season, and he'll probably continue to do well and maybe even get Rookie of the Year. Now moving on to the Denver Broncos, who took an L from the Chargers and will take on the Saints on Thursday Night Football. Now when it comes to the Broncos, they are doing pretty decently with Bo Nix. He's not a top 5 quarterback yet, let alone a top 10. He's definitely probably in the top 20, top 15, around there. But in the end, when it comes down to the Denver Broncos, it really comes down to how well they can play for the rest of the year. Because right now they're 3-3. They're, I believe, number 2 in the division. If not, it's the Chargers. Then realistically, they have a chance. They still have a chance not only for a division title, but a playoff push. Now, will they get that division title? Probably not. But that playoff push, even so, is still there. And Bo Nix is going to try and get the Broncos to that level. Now, on to the Arizona Cardinals, who just got beat by the Green Bay Packers on Lambeau Field, and now will take on the Chargers at home. To be honest, I think that the Cardinals, they're going to be in the same situation as Seattle, but honestly, even worse. They're going to be the team that will finish last in the division, probably top 3 draft pick, top 5 potentially. But in the end, when it comes down to it, like, the Cardinals, they just need a lot of help right now. It doesn't matter as well who's the head coach. Right now, they'll fail no matter what, because that's how bad this team is, and I think they will continue to be on this horrible streak. Now, moving on to New York Jets, we got them losing to the Bills, and now they're going to go up against the Steelers after losing to the Bills on Monday night on Sunday night. When it comes to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers just trying his best. The offense just not performing. And guess who they fired instead of someone on offense? They fired the defensive head coach after the defense of the Jets ended up being amazing. Yeah, you heard that right. They fired the wrong guy. Nathaniel Hackett. Honestly, if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers, he wouldn't be in New York, let alone be hired as a coordinator at this point, because realistically, he's just not a good coordinator, let alone a head coach. So, luckily for the Jets, they didn't sign or put Nathaniel Hackett as the head coach. Otherwise, this team would have been in the toilet even worse than him just being the coordinator of the offense. Now, moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who took a win over the Saints and now take on the Ravens on Monday night. And I think 100% we're going to be seeing a very good matchup between the Ravens and the Bucs. But to be honest, that is a tough game to really predict. And when it comes to Baker Mayfield, he's been doing pretty well. Honestly, not good enough times, but still pretty well. Mike Evans still top receiver. You got Chris Godwin as well on that receiving core. You got a good defense. Honestly, the Bucs are prime candidates for being the division winners. Although Atlanta is not far behind. Now moving on to the Chicago Bears, who just took a win from the Jaguars on Sunday in London. And now we'll head on to their bye week. And this is a bye week where they need to really rest and really make sure that Caleb Williams, even though he's doing decently in my opinion, he needs to do better. He's the first overall pick. He's the franchise's quarterback. He is the guy. And he cannot be the guy if he keeps on making several mistakes. Like, I know you're not perfect. You're human. You're not going to make mistakes. But as a starting quarterback, there are certain mistakes you can't make. And I think Caleb Williams continues to make them while his team potentially stays in contention for the playoffs. Now, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, who took a massive loss to the Detroit Lions, 47-9. But they'll be going on their bye week, so they're going to have some time to rest, some time to game plan for their next opponents. And yeah, they're just not that good of a team anymore. They're not that team. They're going to make the playoffs most likely, but honestly, Washington's giving them a run for their money because honestly, I think Philadelphia at this point is the team that rivals the Commanders who lead the division right now. But in the end, do Washington make the playoffs and do Dallas make the playoffs? Now, Dallas, probably. Washington, probably not. But as long as the Cowboys continue to play how they're playing, they're not going to be a playoff team. Now, moving on to the Miami Dolphins, who just came off a bye. They're going up against the Colts. And yeah, I'm not sure when they're going to get Tua back, but hopefully for them, they got Tua back because this carousel of quarterbacks is not going good for the Miami Dolphins and will continue to go on a downward spiral. But that does not mean that they're out of this entirely. When it comes down to it, the Miami Dolphins are still a contending team, in my opinion, only if Tua comes back as quick as possible. Otherwise, pair them for another season without the playoffs or an exit of the playoffs in the first round. Now, on to the Los Angeles Chargers, who honestly, they just took down the Broncos and they're going up against the Cardinals in Arizona. Yeah, this team is undoubtedly a top team. And honestly, beating the Broncos is one of the reasons why they'll remain as the second team, but at the second team in the division. But that does not mean the Broncos are out of it yet. Honestly, Justin Herbert versus Bo Nix is honestly a very interesting matchup. And yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to be seeing more fire matchups between the Broncos and Chargers in the near future. And the next one, I believe, might actually be for the potential chance to rival the Chiefs for the division. Now, on to the Cleveland Browns, who just lost the Eagles and will take on the rival Bengals at home. When it comes to this team, just get rid of Deshaun at this point. At least bench him. Realistically, what else are you going to get from DTR or Jameis Winston? You're not going to get any more, but you're going to get better than Deshaun. And that's what they should do, realistically. Deshaun Watson is a distraction, and he is a terrible quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And if they fail to see that, well, guess what? You're not going to be making the playoffs any year soon. Now, on to the Seattle Seahawks. And taking a loss from the 49ers after taking a loss to the Giants, they're going up against the Falcons. Pretty tough team. And to be honest, might be another L at this point. But the Seattle Seahawks, obviously we need a franchise quarterback, but this is not the time to get one. This is the time to build up your franchise. This is the time to build up your team. And yes, that also includes every single draft pick that they get this year. They've got to either scramble for more or select the top player of their need. Just like they did with Byron Murphy this year, I want them to do something like that again next year. And to be honest, Seattle might be a playoff team, but they're definitely not a Super Bowl contender. Now, moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, we got the Falcons honestly defeating the Carolina Panthers, now going up against my Seattle Seahawks. The 4-2 Falcons, they're just doing good, and good. Yes, on some occasions, that good is not really them, but it's mostly like the other team. They're just choking at times. Yeah, against the Buccaneers. Look, that game was serious on both sides. Both defenses sucked, but the offense was always rolling. But that doesn't mean it's always rolling, obviously. Kirk Cousins is not the franchise guy. That would be Michael Penix. If they decide to even give him any sort of stardom. But regardless, I think that the Atlanta Falcons will do pretty good this season, and they'll most likely take down my Seattle Seahawks. Now, moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, where they honestly took down the Titans in a very good game. And they'll be up against the Miami Dolphins, who are just coming off a bye. So, yeah, I think the Colts under Joe Flacco have been pretty good compared to the ones under, obviously, Anthony Richardson. Richardson is just too injury prone. And it's a good thing they had Joe Flacco. He's a pretty good quarterback when coming in for an injured quarterback, obviously. And we saw that in Cleveland last year. Made it to the playoffs, nearly won a playoff game. And seriously, I'm thinking he might actually do that with the Indianapolis Colts this year. Obviously not a division title. That's probably going to the Texans. But definitely a quarterback you want to keep on the roster. And the Colts might actually have a future in the playoffs. Now on to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are just coming off a win over the Giants in MetLife Stadium on Sunday night, and will take on the Cleveland Browns at Cleveland. Now when it comes to the Bengals, they've just been awful throughout the year. Obviously they came off a win against the Giants, but that's the Giants. If I'm not mistaken, their other win came against the Jaguars. Really, the Jaguars. They've not been winning against good teams. So, realistically, when it comes down to it, I think that I 100% believe that the Cincinnati Bengals, most likely, will not only miss the playoffs, will be dead last in the division. And, realistically, Joe Burrow is not enough. They need more. They need more on offense. They need more on defense. They need more. And what they have currently is just not enough. And there's actually rumors that T. Higgins might actually be traded away. That's interesting. And he might get traded to Kansas City. But in the end, I think that they need help getting players rather than just dropping or trading players, especially of T. Higgins' caliber. Now, moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who just came off a win against the Raiders, and now will go up against the Jets on Sunday night. Now, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've been doing pretty good with Justin Fields I do not expect them to swap to Russell Wilson anytime soon, even if he's healthy. And realistically, this last win really didn't. It wasn't really a Steeler win. It was a Raiders loss rather than a Steelers win because the Raiders just shot themselves in the foot all day long. But in the end, it's still a Steelers win. And Justin Fields, even though he's not as good as he was back in the first four wins, yeah, I still think that not only is he a good quarterback, but he's the quarterback to potentially lead this team to the AFC playoff picture, potentially even a division title. Now on to the Philadelphia Eagles, where the Eagles just came off a win against the Browns, and now we'll take the Giants on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Eagles, they seriously need to start focusing on the honestly the true part of the season that they need to worry about because they are going to go up against some tough teams. That's a given. So this win against the Browns is insignificant in my opinion. Although if they start losing games, it becomes significant. Although it's still up for grabs because especially because of this Eagles team and the taunting that their coach did to, I think it was Nick Sirianni, their coach, did to the Browns fans. Also, that's not a pretty good move, especially from a quarterback, especially from a head coach on the hot seat. So, in the end, I think that the Philadelphia Eagles just need to work hard to try and get to that division title lead because, to be honest, that's right now for Washington. Now, on to the San Francisco 49ers, where we have the Niners beating my Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night, and will take on the Chiefs, who just came off a bye and are obviously still undefeated. So, yeah, that's a given. The Kansas City Chiefs will most likely win that one. But disregarding that fact, the 49ers have not been doing pretty well this season, losing to the Cardinals, losing 3 games in general. Like, this game put them back in the division lead, but they are currently tied record-wise with the Seattle Seahawks. They only got a game over them because they just beat the Seattle Seahawks. Otherwise, they would be in second, potentially even third place in the division, and Seattle would still be number one. And I'm kind of saddened about that. But regardless of the fact, the Brock Purdy led 49ers, it's a pretty decent offense. Their defense needs a little bit more work, especially going up against some tough teams. So, especially like Kansas City, for example. So, they better get their heads together for this team because this is going to be one of the toughest games of the year for the 49ers. Now, moving on to the Buffalo Bills, where they just beat the New York Jets on Monday night, and will take on the Titans on Sunday. When it comes to the Bills, Josh Allen, pretty good. Pretty good offense from the Bills. Pretty good defense as well at times. But honestly, this game against the Titans ain't going to be much of an issue. But moving forward, you're still in contention for losing that division title to Miami or another team. Specifically the Jets, even though they technically just lost to you. But disregarding that, I still think those two teams are in contention for the division title. Even if their record doesn't say it, I still think they are. In the end, the Bills need to lock it up with some more wins. And the more wins they get, I believe that they'll be at enough wins that it won't really matter what any other team does. They win the division. So that's most likely what I think Buffalo will do. But the Titans game is just a given for the Buffalo Bills. Now, moving on to the Minnesota Vikings, who just came off a bye, are still obviously 5-0, and they will take on the Detroit Lions on Sunday at home. So, when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold has just been outstanding. If it was J.J. McCarthy, I think it would still be the same, because in the end, I think that Sam Darnold is obviously a bridge quarterback for J.J. McCarthy. He'll probably be there next year as a backup, potentially, unless a back broken team wants him and ends up going and paying a lot for Sam Darnold. But that's beside the point. The point is, I think that Minnesota will be 100% most likely the division champions, but I mean, Green Bay is right behind them, just smelling their butts. So we can't be for sure the Vikings will take that division. Now, moving on to the Green Bay Packers, where the Packers just beat the Cardinals. They're going up against the Texans. This team is honestly up for grabs. Like, they're like, it's like 1 week we're good, 1 week we're bad, 1 week we're good, 1 week we're bad. That's what I think I'm seeing from the Green Bay Packers. And to be honest, that's honestly mostly due to the fact that their quarterback situation is kind of iffy because first you start out with a loss against the Eagles, then you lose your quarterback after that game. 2 weeks of Will Levis, and you got some very good football coming from the quarterback. Then you get back your quarterback, he loses, and then all this mumbo jumbo about winning. But in the end, when it comes down to it, it all comes down to the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers for that NFC North title. Now on to the Houston Texans, who just took down the Patriots, will take on the Packers in Lambeau Field. So when it comes to the Texans, they are most likely in for the division title. Most likely. And I can't say that for sure because obviously the Indianapolis Colts are still not that far behind them. So when it comes to the Houston Texans, I think that the Texans will most likely take the dub against the Packers and most likely in a few weeks end up winning the AFC South outright. Now moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, where the Ravens just took down the Commanders, take on the Buccaneers on Monday night. Honestly, this game is going to be interesting. Monday Night Football between the Ravens and Bucks. And realistically, this is a toss-up, in my opinion. And even though that's a toss-up, I think the Ravens are still a very good team. Even better than the Buccaneers. But like I said, it's a toss-up because you honestly never know with these Buccaneers. Like, at one point you go like, okay, they're going to lose. They're going to win. So realistically, it's up for grabs. And both teams are pretty good. I think that the Ravens are actually a bit better, but they're just not performing as well as they should compared to the Buccaneers. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty interesting game and pretty interesting game to watch Lamar Jackson play. Now moving on to the Detroit Lions, where they just beat handily the Dallas Cowboys and will take on the Vikings in Minnesota. This game is for the division lead. I believe so. Either we're going to be seeing a 4-2 Lions team and an undefeated Vikings team, or we're going to see both teams at 5-1. It all comes down to who is the better team, and I think right now that is potentially Detroit. I know that the Vikings just came off a bye and they're still undefeated, obviously, but I think that the Vikings, they are going to become overconfident. They're going to be this team like, oh, we're the best. We're the 5-0 Minnesota Vikings. But I think that something's going to happen, and this game is going to end up in a trap game for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, 5-0, going up against the 49ers at Levi Stadium, and they're coming off their bye. Like I said with the Vikings, this is a trap game. Either the Chiefs are going to come out with the win and be okay, or they're going to come out with a loss and their momentum will be shut, and they might go on a downturn momentum. Although, we all know how the refs are with the Chiefs, so we never know that perspective, but in a football perspective, I think that the Chiefs will continue their win streak. Will they be undefeated? No, definitely not. But against San Francisco? Really? Now, that was it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Who should be higher and who should be lower in your opinion? Tell me down in the comments below. Now, like this video if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the notification if you want more videos. And I'll see you guys next time.